Can you believe these fake officers had the audacity to try and raid my cabin? I'm still sitting here in disbelief over what just happened. 3 individuals, dressed in what looked like legitimate police uniforms, showed up at my secluded ranch. They flashed badges, handed over government-style documents, and even had the nerve to threaten to confiscate my property over supposed violations. They introduced themselves as HOA enforcement agents, pretending they had real authority to search my land. They clearly assumed I'd be an easy mark as some lone guy off the grid who'd cave in and hand over cash without a fight. What they didn't know was that I'm not the kind of person to be pushed around, and that miscalculation turned their well-planned scam into their worst-case scenario. Let me take you back a bit before any of this mess started. I'm 42, a retired Navy SEAL, living quietly on a 200-acre ranch in Montana. My cabin sits right by a tranquil lake, the kind of place you dream about when you've seen too much chaos. After 2 decades in the service, much of it in naval intelligence, all I wanted was a place to recover. This ranch became my sanctuary, remote, peaceful, and nestled among the mountains. That lake was where I'd fish and try to shake the battle-ready mindset that had become second nature to me. For the first time in years, I was starting to sleep without flinching at every creak or distant sound. I was beginning to believe I could actually have something close to a normal life. You know that uneasy feeling when your body is so used to tension that relaxing feels like danger? That's where I was learning to breathe again. But one calm spring morning shattered that peace. I was out on the dock, fixing up a few things, when the mailman dropped off a certified letter. It looked officially heavy envelope, high-quality paper, embossed seal. The header read, Pine Valley Homeowners Association, complete with what looked like a government watermark. The notice inside claimed my ranch violated something called the New Lake Protection Environmental Act of 2023. It said an HOA inspection was mandatory within 10 business days. If I didn't comply, I'd be hit with a $25,000 fine and possibly lose the property under a specific section of Montana law. I was stunned. I bought this land specifically because it wasn't under any HOA. My training kicked in. Something felt off. You ever get that deep gut feeling that something's wrong, even when everything appears legit? That's what hit me. I went inside and pulled out all my purchase documents. The deed was crystal clear: independent, non-HOA residential ranch land. No restrictions, no HOA, nothing even remotely close. But this letter cited real-sounding environmental laws, just enough to trick most people. I looked up the Montana Lake Protection Environmental Act 2023, and sure enough, a sleek-looking government-style site popped up. It had the Gov look, environmental seals, fake legislative references, and even made-up environmental reports. Whoever was behind this had done their homework. The attention to detail was almost impressive. I called the number on the letter, and a woman answered with calm authority. Mr. Hawkins, this is Victoria Sterling, Director of Enforcement with Pine Valley HOA, she said smoothly. I assume you've received our compliance notification. When I told her there's no HOA on my property, she didn't miss a beat. I understand the confusion, she replied. As of March, all lakefront ranches in the region are automatically enrolled under new ecological oversight. But what really threw me was when she casually brought up my military background. She referred to my Navy service like she'd studied my life. We have expedited compliance paths for military veterans, she said, and I personally want to make sure you're not blindsided by these new environmental regulations. That should have been my first real warning sign. She was good at too good. Every detail was precise. The paperwork looked authentic. The codes she quoted matched real Montana laws. She even knew personal things about me and the property that shouldn't have been easy to find. She framed herself as an ally, as someone guiding me through a maze of bureaucracy. Mr. Hawkins, I'd hate to see a fellow patriot suffer due to legal missteps, she said. Our team can visit tomorrow to do a pre-inspection and help you meet all the environmental standards before the state conducts their formal assessment. It was a clever tactic of pressure without outright threats. She made it seem like I was already in trouble, and she was offering the only lifeline. She spoke convincingly about septic systems, dock alignment with fish habitats, and runoff hazards. All of it sounded believable. When I asked about costs, she said it depended on violations found, but the average was between $8,000 and $15,000, compared to the supposed $47,000 in government fines. Her offer sounded almost reasonable. She painted the picture of a bloated, overreaching government eager to snatch land from unsuspecting ranchers. And she was the helpful alternative via the one keeping a veteran from losing everything. It was genius-level manipulation. She wasn't selling a product. She was offering to save me. I agreed to the inspection, but something still felt rotten. That evening, I stayed up digging. The more I researched, the worse it looked. Pine Valley HOA wasn't listed anywhere in Montana's business registry. And Victoria Sterling, no record of her with any environmental agency. The law Victoria cited didn't exist in any legitimate legislative records, but the way it was presented could have fooled just about anyone without an intelligence background. Whoever orchestrated this operation knew exactly what they were doing. It was a well-constructed illusion, convincing enough to pass a quick inspection by someone unfamiliar with the tricks of psychological manipulation. As I quietly installed hidden security cameras around the perimeter of my property and double-checked my defensive setups, a persistent thought haunted me. Back in my naval intelligence days, I learned that the most dangerous threats aren't loud or reckless. They're the ones who gather information, who understand the psychology of their target, and who build their lies on a backbone of believable details. Victoria Sterling had mastered all three. She clearly knew my past, understood how someone with my military background might react, and crafted a fraud so carefully aligned with legitimate laws it could pass initial scrutiny. But in doing so, they overlooked one critical detail, a mistake that would eventually unravel their entire scheme. There was something I didn't catch about Victoria until I reviewed the footage from my cameras later on. That single observation would shift my entire perspective on what I thought I understood about their game. The next afternoon, at exactly 2 o'clock, I watched through the cabin window as a sleek black Chevy Tahoe rolled into my driveway. Its plates were styled to resemble official government tags. The people who stepped out moved like professionals. This wasn't their first operation. The driver was a towering man, easily over 6 feet tall, clad in a dark navy uniform with patches reading HOA Police Division. His gear looked authentic: handcuffs, radio, and what seemed to be a real taser. His body language gave off law enforcement vibes, from his tactical scanning of the property to the confident way he advanced toward my door. The passenger side opened, and a younger woman stepped out carrying top-grade inspection gear. She had a tablet, a high-powered camera with a zoom lens, precision measuring tools, and a leather briefcase embossed with Pine Valley HOA Legal Documentation Division. She moved quickly, efficiently, and clearly trained for this. Then came Victoria Sterling herself. I'll give her these: she looked the part. A sharp business suit that probably cost more than a month's salary, a stack of paperwork in a sleek folio, and the walk of someone who expected authority to be given without question. "Mr. Hawkins, I'm Officer Johnson with the HOA Police Division. We're here for your scheduled environmental compliance inspection," the large man stated as I opened the door. His voice carried that calm, firm edge typical of real officers trained to gain compliance. Victoria stepped up next with a practiced handshake. "Victoria Sterling, Enforcement Director, thank you for adjusting your schedule. This will be a routine check, mainly boundary assessments and lakeside environmental compliance." The younger woman, already unpacking her equipment, looked up and said, "I'll be taking environmental photos and logging measurements for state records, sir." Every bit of their act was carefully designed to establish legitimacy, and I'll admit, it was working on a subconscious level. Even with my instincts raising alarms, I found myself second-guessing what I was seeing. What disturbed me most was how much they already knew specifics about my land, past ownership, obscure local regulations, and even confidential details from my military record that were never part of any public archive. Officer Johnson used advanced surveying equipment to measure the distance from my cabin to the shoreline, a gear far too expensive for a typical HOA operation. The young woman, whose name, I later learned, was Jenny, worked methodically, taking GPS-tagged photos of every supposed infraction. Her tablet displayed what looked like legitimate environmental audit software, complete with official logos and interface styling that mimicked real government tools. The violations they cited were cleverly chosen, technical enough to sound serious, but believable enough that someone without in-depth knowledge would accept them without question. Victoria explained that my cabin's proximity to fish spawning zones violated new lakefront setback mandates. Jenny followed up by pointing out my septic system didn't meet recently updated groundwater protection standards, estimating a remediation cost of $28,000. Then Officer Johnson added another blow. My dock's location fell within restricted navigational zones under new maritime laws, and it would need full relocation. Finally, they hit me with the claim that my ranch's drainage patterns were sending runoff into protected watershed areas, which, according to them, would require landscape redesign and an expensive water retention system. Once they totaled everything up, Jenny delivered the final figure, $47,000 in necessary corrections, plus $23,000 in additional penalties for failure to comply. But, of course, Victoria had a solution. "Well, Mr. Hawkins," she said smoothly, "we do offer an expedited compliance program. For a symbolic $1 administrative fee, our certified contractors can manage all permits, perform the necessary modifications, and handle all state filings on your behalf. That way, you avoid penalty as a broken bar." She framed it as protection from red tape, avoiding legal entanglements and delays if I acted quickly. But when I pointed out that $15,000 was a steep price for what appeared to be minor compliance issues, Officer Johnson took a deliberate step forward, his posture shifting into something unmistakably confrontational. "Sir, these are not small concerns. Environmental infractions can bring federal consequences," he said, his tone sharp. "We're giving you a path to resolution through local HOA procedures." From that moment on, the pressure dialed up fast. Victoria laid it out plainly: if I didn't comply within 30 days, they claimed the HOA had full legal authority to seize my land for environmental remediation. She insisted that state environmental law took priority over any personal property rights. Officer Johnson backed her up, explaining that their so-called HOA police division had enforcement powers equivalent to the county sheriff's office when it came to environmental infractions. He claimed to be a certified peace officer with specialization in environmental law enforcement. His hand hovered casually near his handcuffs as he calmly emphasized they always preferred cooperation but weren't afraid to act if it came to that. The psychological pressure was well crafted. Victoria insisted I make a decision that same day. She warned that the state's environmental team would arrive the following week, and if they discovered violations not addressed through HOA channels, the financial penalties would rise dramatically. I stayed calm and played along, telling them I understood the seriousness and just needed to evaluate my financial options. When I asked for proof of their legal authority documents, code reference S of Victoria was fully prepared. She handed me a folder packed with what appeared to be official documents, enforcement authorizations, compliance certifications, references to state laws, all stamped and formatted to look completely legitimate. She circled back to my military background. "Mr. Hawkins," she said, "your service record tells me you understand command structure and the importance of legal compliance. I have a deep respect for that, and I want to make sure this is handled right for your sake." It was expert-level manipulation. She wasn't just using fear, she was using my own value and my identity as a veteran to corner me into trusting her. It was subtle, personal, and calculated. They left my property with the same tight coordination they'd arrived with, and never once dropping the Section 8 of official authority. Victoria told me they'd be back the next day at 2 p.m. to hear my decision. If I chose expedited compliance, she instructed me to have certified funds ready. Officer Johnson reiterated that the deadline was final. Miss it, and they'd execute a seizure warrant. Jenny chimed in that all photos and environmental data had already been submitted to the state, meaning the process would be irreversible once triggered. As their SUV rolled away, I was already putting a counterplan in motion. That night, I reviewed the footage from my security system, frame by frame. I closely examined every document they had left behind. The more I studied them, the more I realized I was dealing with professionals and not some two-bit con artists. Their gear was top tier. Their documents were well-crafted forgeries. Their behavior was psychologically engineered for manipulation. But there were flaws, a small details someone without experience might miss, but that stood out clearly to someone with my background. Legal phrasing that wasn't quite right, references to codes that didn't match official formats, and little inconsistencies in their body language that felt practiced rather than natural. I started reaching out to my veteran contacts, quietly asking around about any strange environmental enforcement activity targeting ex-military property owners. The story that began unfolding chilled me to the core, and it had nothing to do with money. Let me know where you're watching from. I want to see how far the Anadramanest community reaches. Anadramanest family, what I uncovered next will shock you. The following morning, I switched into full intelligence mode. After 20 years of tracking enemies, I developed more than a few investigative skills. My first move, verify everything. I called the Montana Department of Environmental Quality in Helena directly. Not using any of the contacts Victoria had given me, I reached a senior supervisor who had worked there for over 15 years. His response was immediate. "Sir, there is no Lake Protection Environmental Act from 2023, he said flatly. That law does not exist in the state of Montana. When I mentioned the so-called HOA Enforcement Authority, he chuckled. That's not how environmental compliance works here. Someone's trying to scam you. Next, I searched the Montana Secretary of State's business registry. There was no Pine Valley Homeowners Association registered and no business license, no articles of incorporation, no tax documents, nothing. Victoria Sterling? She had no certifications with any Montana regulatory body. A deeper search through national licensing databases turned up the same result. No professional record, no affiliation with any legitimate agency. She didn't exist, at least not in any official capacity. Even the government-style license plates on their vehicle turned out to be fake. The images I had taken led me to a rental company. The company name was registered to a mailbox drop in Colorado. Every part of their operation, the uniforms, documents, website ESA, was an illusion, crafted to deceive anyone who didn't know how to investigate properly. But the deeper I dug, the more disturbing it got. I started cross-referencing property records within a 50-mile radius of my ranch, and that's when I discovered something far more sinister. I uncovered a disturbing pattern in multiple lakefront ranch properties, all owned by veterans, all recently approached by so-called environmental compliance organizations. The names varied slightly, but the tactics were identical. I wasn't their first victim. I was simply next on the list in what was clearly a coordinated and deliberate operation. Using my background in intelligence, I began piecing together their network through social media forensics. Jenny, the younger woman from the inspection team, had a public Instagram page flaunting a lifestyle that didn't match any legitimate government salary posts, from luxury resorts, designer clothing hauls, and check-ins at upscale hotels across several states. Her tagged travel locations aligned with a route through Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, and Arizona, states with high veteran populations and, more importantly, large numbers of desirable lakefront properties. That couldn't be coincidence. I decided to escalate to physical surveillance. One afternoon, I tailed their black Tahoe after it left what appeared to be a nondescript office building. Instead of a state agency headquarters, they pulled into the parking lot of the most exclusive resort in Kalispell, where they were staying in a suite that ran $400 a night. From a hidden position with military-grade binoculars, I observed them meeting with someone new, a man I hadn't seen before. He was sharply dressed, carried a laptop and briefcase, and clearly commanded more authority than the others. I couldn't hear everything, but enough snippets carried across the parking lot to turn my blood to ice. The new individual was talking about target lists. Specifically, he referenced the Montana-listed 12 lakefront ranches and 6 riverfront properties, all remote, all owned by military veterans, and all identified as high-value assets. Victoria responded with alarming confidence, sharing financial outcomes from other states. The Colorado cycle cleared $340,000 last quarter, she said. Montana's list should bring in at least $500,000, based on current property values. Officer Johnson voiced concern about resistance from veterans due to military training. Victoria's reply exposed the core of their entire strategy. "Military training helps us," she said coldly. "Veterans follow procedure. They respect authority and they verify information through official channels. By the time they catch on, we've already collected and disappeared." Using a telephoto lens, I managed to snap a clear shot of Jenny's tablet screen during their conversation. The spreadsheet she was reviewing made me sick. It contained names of 47 in total, all veterans across mountain states. Next to each name were property values, service details, and chilling psychological profiles. They had developed what they called isolation score as a metric ranking how alone each veteran lived in compliance probability, estimating how likely each individual was to cooperate based on military experience and mental health. My own entry was on the list. Hawkins, Ethan, a Navy SEAL, $850,000 property, high priority, lives alone, possible PTSD, likely to comply under pressure. This wasn't some opportunistic con. It was a targeted, calculated, and organized operation built around psychological warfare. They weren't just scamming, they were hunting. Then I heard Victoria coordinating over a phone call with other teams. Seattle team just finished Phase 1. West Coast netted $280,000 last month. Mountain team is prepped for Phase 2 extractions. The voice on the other end pushed for urgency. Phoenix wants Montana cleared in 60 days. After that, we moved to Texas Hill Country. Victoria confirmed they had psychological data on a dozen prime targets, all veterans, and that military obedience made them perfect marks. This wasn't a local grift. It was a national fraud ring targeting veterans in state after state, using regionally based teams, centralized leadership, and weaponized psychological profiling. I immediately put out discreet warnings through veteran channels, coded messages alerting others to the scam. The replies came fast and confirmed my worst suspicions. Martinez, a Marine vet, messaged, "They hit me last month. I paid $12,000 thinking I'd lose the land. Felt off but everything looked official." Johnson, an Army veteran, said, "They got me 2 weeks ago. Paid $8,500. They mentioned my unit in Kandahar as stuff nobody should know unless they had access to classified records." Most urgently, Williams, retired Air Force, said, "They're coming to collect tomorrow. Said I owe $15,000. Final notice before federal penalties hit." I knew time was running out. I used my military contacts to escalate fast. Through a secure network, I contacted the FBI's Financial Crimes Division and was connected with Special Agent Sarah Martinez. She had already been tracking a similar caseload across western states. "We've been following a large-scale fraud network that targets veterans specifically," she said. "Your intel aligns with multiple ongoing investigations across the region, but we still need a." Agent Martinez explained the critical challenge: catching them red-handed with enough evidence to pursue federal charges. She detailed how similar operations had already been identified in several states. Colorado alone had seen 12 victims lose a collective $340,000. In Utah, 8 veterans were defrauded out of $180,000. Wyoming had 6 victims with $90,000 stolen, and Arizona had 15 cases totaling $280,000. The total confirmed losses surpassed $1 million, leaving dozens of veteran households in financial ruin. Together, we created a strategic plan to shield the veteran community and gather solid proof for prosecution. Our objective was clear: allow the scammers to attempt their fraudulent collection on me while documenting everything in real time, providing undeniable evidence for legal action, and warning others at the same time. The operation was designed to be public. We arranged to stream the encounter live to veteran groups online so that members could witness the confrontation firsthand. FBI teams would be staged nearby, ready to act the moment sufficient cause presented itself. We also coordinated with local media to help expose the scam as it unfolded. As I ran final checks on the equipment and multiple camera angles, live stream connectivity, I took a moment to reflect. These scammers weren't just clever, they'd studied military psychology, built their entire operation on our habits, respect for hierarchy, faith and procedure, and systematic thinking. The very instincts that had kept us alive in war zones were being turned against us. But what they hadn't accounted for was that not every veteran was predictable. They didn't know they were up against someone with naval intelligence experience trained specifically to track and trap people like them. When the FBI began looking into the woman I knew as Victoria Sterling, they uncovered something far darker than identity fraud. It was more disturbing than anything I had anticipated. That morning, I was up before sunrise converting my entire ranch into a tactical surveillance zone. 20 years in naval intelligence had taught me one lesson above all: when you're going after professionals, you need precision, layers of security, and fail-safes for every outcome. I installed 4K resolution cameras at every critical location: entrances, the main house, the dock, and the surrounding trails. Backup recorders were discreetly placed in natural cover. I also placed directional microphones designed to pick up voices from multiple vantage points. The internet was tested for high bandwidth live streaming to private groups of veterans across different platforms. Agent Martinez and her team set up a staging perimeter 2 miles away. She reminded me, "We'll be watching the stream in real time. The moment you give the signal, we move in. But your safety comes first. Don't prioritize the evidence over your life." I told her I expected they'd attempt the collection, possibly make threats if I resisted. She agreed that capturing their behavior on video and audio, particularly their verbal confirmation of intent, was key to getting convictions across several states. Within just 2 hours of my alert going live, it had been shared through 47 veteran networks, reaching over 15,000 military families. The flood of responses was immediate and intense. Victims, near victims, and allies flooded the comment threads. Some shared eerily similar stories. Others offered tactical help. Many simply expressed gratitude that someone was finally taking a stand against the predators who had long been hunting our community under the radar. Then Agent Martinez called again with an update that changed the entire nature of the mission. "The real Victoria Sterling died in a car accident 6 months ago," she said. "In Bozeman, we're looking at full identity theft. Everything from her social security number to her professional credentials was compromised after her death." I asked her what this meant for our operation. Her reply was chilling. "Preliminary fingerprint analysis from your surveillance confirms that the woman posing as Victoria is actually Melissa Torres, wanted in 4 states for a series of veteran-targeted scams under multiple identities." Melissa Torres, age 38, a seasoned fraud artist specializing in manipulation based on authority dynamics. Her previous schemes had focused on elderly people, grieving widows, and most relevant military veterans. Her career as a con artist was believed to stretch back at least 6 years, with total damages estimated between $1.20 and $2 million. This wasn't her first rodeo, but it was about to be her last. At precisely 2 p.m., the black Tahoe turned into my driveway. Unlike their earlier visit, there was a marked sense of urgency. They weren't there for another staged inspection. This was collection day. Their demeanor had changed. Gone was the veneer of official professionalism. In its place was something more forceful, more menacing. Victoria, or rather, Melissa Torres, stepped out of the vehicle with her team. She had replaced her business attire with clothing styled after law enforcement, clearly meant to project authority. In her hands were folders that looked like official warrants, along with digital tablets and legal-looking briefcases, creating the impression that formal proceedings were about to begin. Officer Johnson came equipped with additional gear, extra handcuffs, a radio with background chatter, likely pre-recorded, and a taser prominently clipped to his belt. Jenny carried high-resolution cameras and documents ready for signing. Her tablet displayed what appeared to be a professional asset seizure interface, realistic enough to be convincing. As they neared my door, I launched the live stream, speaking directly to the initial 850 viewers, a number that would soon swell past 1,200. "Brothers and sisters, you're about to witness firsthand how these sophisticated con artists target our veteran community. They think they're here to collect $15,000 from a compliant veteran. They're in for a surprise." Supportive comments began rolling in almost instantly. Messages like, "Get these frauds. We've got your 6, brother. and Navy SEAL Justice incoming filled the screen. The stream gained momentum rapidly as veterans and their families tuned in. Melissa Torres entered with a false sense of control, speaking like she'd done this a dozen times. "Mr. Hawkins, you've had 24 hours to comply. Do you have the certified funds prepared?" When I told her I had questions about their legal authority, Officer Johnson's hand drifted toward his cuffs as he advanced a step. "Sir, we've been more than patient. Time's up. Pay now, or we enforce the HOA seizure warrant." Melissa wasted no time escalating. "Mr. Hawkins, you can cooperate or we escalate. We have the authority to raid your property and log all assets for collection." Jenny started spreading out paperwork, calmly explaining they were authorized to inventory all valuables as part of the process. By then, the live viewer count hit 3,200 and was still rising. Officer Johnson grew more aggressive. "Our environmental enforcement badge gives us powers equivalent to police," he said. "We can and will search this property." I asked Jenny to show me the compliance software on her device. She hesitated. "It's proprietary state software not available to the public," she said nervously. Turning to the camera, I looked directly into the lens. "Interesting, because I spoke with the Montana Environmental Department yesterday." A heavy silence fell over the room. My phone buzzed non-stop as thousands of veterans watching the stream began flooding the comment section. Melissa's voice cracked slightly. "Mr. Hawkins, let's not make this more difficult than it has to be." I pressed the advantage. "You know what they told me about this so-called Lake Protection Act? Want to take a guess?" That's when Officer Johnson made the mistake that unraveled it all. Sensing that the charade had collapsed, he charged at me. "Enough. Shut off that camera now." I didn't move an inch. "Not happening, Mike." He lunged, cuffs out and shouting. I said turn it off. My Navy SEAL instincts kicked in without hesitation. The takedown took exactly 2.5 seconds and it happened in front of 4,500 live viewers. Half a second in, I shifted my weight, sidestepping and catching his extended arm in a precise grip honed through years of CQB training. At 1 second, I redirected his momentum, twisting his arm behind his back, spinning his 250-pound frame effortlessly. At 1.5 seconds, I landed an elbow into the nerve junction at his shoulder, rendering his arm completely useless. At 2 seconds, I swept his legs, dropping him hard to the cabin floor with a thud that echoed through the stream. At 2.5 seconds, my knee was pinned to his spine, his wrist in a locked position that would cause searing pain with any resistance. The comment section exploded. "Holy Navy SEAL takedown, 3 seconds flat. Military training greater than fake authority. That's why you don't mess with veterans." Groaning into the floor, Officer Johnson muttered, "Get off me. This is police brutality." A broken bar. I stayed calm and in control. "You're not law enforcement, Mike. This is a citizen's arrest for attempted fraud." Jenny, now in a full panic, backed toward the exit. "Oh my God, Melissa, do something." Melissa Torres was visibly shaken, inching toward the door. Mike was supposed to handle security. A broken bar. Viewer count surged to over 6,500 veterans and their families witnessing justice in action. Still pinning Johnson down with one knee, I held up a printed death certificate for the camera. "Everyone watching to meet the real Victoria Sterling. She died 6 months ago in a car crash in Bozeman." The reaction in the comments section was immediate and explosive. "The what? They stole the identity of a dead woman? This is beyond insane." Johnson, struggling beneath me, groaned again, pinned under my control. Officer Johnson finally looked up and shouted, to Melissa, "You told us your name was Victoria. What is going on?" I held up an FBI document directly to the camera. "Her real name is Melissa Torres. She's wanted by the FBI for defrauding veterans across Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, and Arizona." Melissa completely unraveled. "Everybody shut up. Let Mike go," she yelled. Jenny, now fully panicked, was crying. "You said everything was legit. You said we were working for the state. We're going to end up in federal prison." I released Officer Johnson, who backed away quickly, nursing his arm. The panic in his eyes was unmistakable. "You dragged me into federal crimes," he snapped at Melissa. "I have kids." When Melissa turned to me and asked what made me so special, I revealed the final card in my hand. "I'm not just any Navy SEAL. I spent 2 decades in naval intelligence hunting people like you. It hit Officer Johnson instantly. "You tricked us into targeting a professional intelligence officer," he said, turning to Melissa in disbelief. Jenny was in tears. "We're going to federal prison because you lied to us." The viewer count on the live stream hit its peak at 6,500 strong, of veterans and their families watching justice unfold in real time. The chat was a flood of comments. "Naval intelligence versus scammersa, this is over." "Anna Dramanes never disappoints." "Real spy takes down amateur cons." 6 months later, a call came that shook me to my core. Melissa hadn't been acting alone, and her accomplices were coming for me. If you're part of the Anna Dramanes community, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Our global family just keeps growing, but trust me, you won't believe what happened next. At precisely 2:47 p.m., 3 black FBI SUVs rolled up my driveway with military-like precision. This was clearly a coordinated operation, long in the making. Agent Martinez led an 8-person unit from the Financial Crimes Division, specializing in cross-state fraud rings. They moved like professionals who'd done this exact dance many times. Through the cabin door, Martinez announced in a firm voice, "FBI Financial Crimes Division, exit the premises with your hands where we can see them." Melissa was backed into a corner, still clinging to her act. "This is entrapment. You can't stream arrests live." I turned to the camera, which now had 6,800 viewers. 6,800 witnesses disagree with you, Melissa. Officer Johnson immediately raised both hands. "I'm fully cooperating. I thought this was real government work." Jenny, sobbing uncontrollably, followed suit. "She showed me state contracts. I just needed a jailbroken bar." Agent Martinez read Melissa her rights calmly and precisely. "Melissa Torres, you are under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, impersonating federal personnel, conspiracy to defraud veterans, and violations of the federal RICO statute." Melissa tried one last protest. "This was an HOA issue. This isn't federal." Martinez didn't even blink. "Ma'am, stealing the identity of a deceased individual, executing cross-state fraud, and deliberately targeting protected veteran populations, this is absolutely a federal matter." What followed was a textbook evidence seizure. Agents collected every digital device, laptops, phones, tablets, all containing victim databases that revealed the scope of their operation. Fraudulent paperwork was bagged, including fake government documents, invented environmental statutes, and bogus legal threats that had been used to scare veterans across several states. The financial evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, wire transfers, payment logs, and profit sheets tied to their criminal activity. Most damning of all was the identity theft evidence, documents stolen from the deceased Victoria Sterling, including government IDs, fabricated licenses, and forged credentials that allowed Melissa to impersonate her. Officer Johnson, now fully cooperating, laid out how they'd been duped. "She showed me fake certificates that looked like legit environmental compliance credentials. Even had what looked like real background checks and government pay stubs. I thought I was a peace officer doing actual enforcement work." Jenny's account was equally revealing. "She found me through a staffing agency, said it was admin work for a new environmental task force. I honestly believed I was helping enforce compliance." Agent Martinez acknowledged their cooperation on the record. "Mr. Johnson, Miss Vienna, your cooperation has been noted. You appear to be victims of a highly sophisticated employment scam used to give cover to illegal operations." Behind the scenes, the FBI's forensic accountants had already begun unraveling the money trail. What they uncovered was staggering. Digital forensics uncovered the full scale of Operation Golden Acres, a methodical criminal campaign that specifically targeted. Their operation targeted military veterans across 12 western states. The digital evidence included detailed victim records, psychological profiling, property evaluations, and even isolation ratings, all designed to single out vulnerable individuals. Financial investigations uncovered that $1.88 million had been stolen over the span of just 18 months. In Colorado, 6 members of the ring extracted $340,000 from veterans. In Utah, 4 operatives siphoned $180,000. Wyoming's branch involved 3 individuals who took $90,000. Arizona's 8-member crew deceived victims out of $280,000. At the time of the raid, Montana was their next focus. 4 operatives had already gathered $15,000, and their active target list included 12 more ranches with an estimated $500,000 in potential fraud. The live stream reached a new peak of 8,000 viewers, mostly veterans and their families, watching the operation unfold in real time. The comment section was overwhelmed with support. "Justice for our vets. Thank you, Hawk, for standing up for us." Shared with every veteran group I'm in, Melissa's done. People who had previously fallen victim to the scam were commenting live, sharing their stories. A Marine from Colorado wrote, "She scammed $12,000 from me last year. I can't believe it's over, thank you." An Army vet from Utah added, "I gave her $8,500, finally getting justice." And from Wyoming, an Air Force veteran shared, "My neighbor paid $18,000. We had no clue it was an organized fraud." Melissa tried one last time to justify her actions, revealing how calculated and cold their tactics were. "You military people act like you're untouchable, but you're easy prey. You obey, you don't question authority." I stayed composed. "You're right about one thing, Melissa. We do follow orders, but only when they come from lawful authority. That's why Agent Martinez is arresting you." Martinez promptly advised her to remain silent, but Melissa couldn't stop herself. "I studied all of you. PTSD makes you compliant. Your training makes you trust the chain of command. You were supposed to obey, pay, and stay quiet." Outrage erupted in the chat, but so did solidarity. Melissa's manipulation had hit a nerve, but it had also united thousands. FBI forensic accountants immediately launched asset seizures to recover what had been stolen. They identified 14 bank accounts spread across 6 states, holding $890,000 in illicit funds. They also seized high-end vehicles, luxury equipment, and properties bought using fraud proceeds. Recovery estimates ranged from $1.20 to $1.40 million, enough to make a meaningful impact on restitution efforts. Agent Martinez later confirmed that my intervention had likely recovered most of the stolen funds. Victims could expect a significant portion returned. Federal prosecutors extended plea deals to Officer Johnson and Jenny in return for their full cooperation against Melissa and the wider network. Officer Johnson was sentenced to 18 months of probation, 400 hours of community service focused on educating veterans about fraud prevention, and required to make restitution payments. Jenny received 12 months probation, 300 hours of community work, and a 3-year prohibition from employment in financial or government roles. Both issued heartfelt public apologies to the veteran community and committed to assisting the ongoing investigation. Melissa Torres, however, was facing a long list of federal charges, enough to ensure decades behind bars. She was hit with 47 counts of wire fraud, 1 for each known victim. She was also charged with identity theft for using credentials stolen from the late Victoria Sterling. Her impersonation of federal officers and false claims of authority were included, along with charges under the RICO Act for operating an organized criminal enterprise across state lines. Conspiracy charges addressed her collaboration with other fraud rings. Sentencing guidelines pointed to a prison term of 15 to 25 years, in addition to full restitution for every victim. As the live broadcast continued, powerful testimonies poured in. A Marine vet from Colorado wrote, "She stole my daughter's college fund." "Mr. Hawkins, you gave us back our dignity." An Army veteran from Utah commented, "She knew about my deployment, my injuries, and my family. She used my service as a weapon. Thank you for stopping her." From Wyoming, an Air Force veteran added, "I lost $18,000. I almost lost my ranch. You have no idea what this means to us." These weren't just numbers on a page. This was about betrayal, the erosion of trust, and the exploitation of those who served. The real impact wasn't just financial, it was personal, deeply personal. The Andromenes community was already spreading the warning. Across social platforms, messages were going viral of veterans alerting others and rallying to protect one another. Veterans of Foreign Wars posts, American Legion chapters, and military family circles were alerted to the dangers of advanced fraud schemes targeting their community. The live demonstration had a powerful educational effect in exposing thousands of veterans to the psychological tactics used by criminals, including manipulation, false authority, impersonation, and deceptive environmental setups. Most importantly, the veteran community responded by forming a rapid alert system for identifying and reporting similar scams, so helping others before they, too, became victims. Agent Martinez confirmed that the live-streamed evidence would not only bring Melissa Torres to justice, but could also implicate dozens of her associates operating throughout western states. What began as a targeted investigation had now grown into a national task force equipped with the resources needed to dismantle the entire fraud network that preyed on veterans. The FBI was already implementing stronger surveillance programs for crimes that targeted military families. Federal agencies and military leaders were collaborating closely to protect those who had served from future victimization. But success came at a cost I hadn't anticipated. Just a few weeks after Melissa Torres was taken into custody, the story of what happened spread across the country, and my quiet life was turned upside down. What began as a local news piece about a former Navy SEAL who had taken down a scam ring quickly caught fire. Primetime coverage aired the live footage. CNN ran extended segments, while Fox News invited me on air to speak about the threats facing the veteran community. Military Times featured a full-cover story on the need to protect military families from financial predators. For someone who had moved to a secluded ranch to avoid attention, the spotlight felt intense. But I quickly realized that visibility could be a too low one that would help keep other veterans safe from the same kinds of traps. Before long, even Congress took notice. The House Veterans Affairs Committee reached out, asking me to testify on veteran-focused fraud. I soon found myself in Washington, D.C., explaining to lawmakers how calculated fraudsters were exploiting the military mindset for profit. The hearing led to the passage of new legislation. It mandated enhanced monitoring of veteran-facing financial services and required better coordination between the Department of Veterans Affairs and federal law enforcement agencies. It felt surreal sitting there in a congressional chamber, but I knew every word I spoke might stop another veteran family from being harmed. The restitution process far exceeded expectations. FBI asset forfeiture teams recovered $1.34 million from Melissa Torres's criminal operation, and federal courts ordered full restitution for 127 verified victims across 6 states. Letters began to pour in. A Marine family from Colorado wrote, "We got back $12,000, plus interest. Our daughter's college fund is safe again thanks to your bravery." An Army veteran in Utah shared, "Our ranch was nearly lost to foreclosure. The $8,500 recovered saved everything. We're forever grateful." A Wyoming Air Force veteran added, "I never thought I'd see that money again." But you didn't just get it back, you restored our faith in the system. The outcome of the federal prosecution surpassed even Agent Martinez's hopes. Melissa Torres was sentenced to 22 years in federal prison, required to make full restitution, and permanently banned from working in financial services. During sentencing, the judge didn't hold back. "Ms. Torres, you systematically preyed on individuals who served this nation with integrity. Your exploitation of veterans is a moral disgrace that warrants the harshest possible consequences." The wider investigation led to 23 more arrests across 8 states, fully dismantling the fraud network that had operated unchecked for years. But the ripple effect didn't stop there. Educational outreach exploded. My work with the FBI helped develop veteran fraud prevention programs that were soon distributed across military bases, VA hospitals, and organizations nationwide. The live stream itself was adopted by the FBI as official training material for spotting and understanding complex fraud operations. I began traveling to military bases across the country, speaking directly with active duty personnel about financial safety, fraud awareness, and how to support fellow service members. While the constant travel was exhausting, there was something deeply fulfilling about it. For the first time since leaving the military, I found that my skills were helping others in a way that also helped me. On a personal level, The experience brought unexpected healing. My therapist noted how turning my training toward protecting people instead of preparing for combat helped ease the inner tension caused by service-related conditioning. I wasn't fighting a war anymore, I was defending my community. Instead of burying my military identity, I was using it to build something meaningful. That something turned out to be the Veteran Protection Network, a formal nonprofit I founded with the help of federal grants and support from veteran-owned companies. We launched a 24/7 hotline for veterans who encountered suspicious contacts. Trained volunteers provided real-time guidance, and we coordinated efforts with the FBI. We worked closely with FBI field offices to create rapid response systems for ongoing fraud threats. Through monthly webinars, active social media outreach, and in-person community seminars, we educated thousands of military families on how to recognize and avoid financial scams. I reinvested recovered funds into fortifying the ranch and improving our cabins, not just for personal safety, but to create a healing retreat for veterans. The ranch evolved into more than just a homestead. It became a center for community restoration. Monthly barbecues brought veterans, their families, and law enforcement together, building a local hub of mutual support. I partnered with the VA to launch outdoor therapy programs for PTSD recovery. Our fishing therapy sessions became so popular we had wait lists months ahead. What started as a search for isolation turned into something far more meaningful, a thriving veteran community built on shared experience and resilience. Even though my evenings still ended on the porch watching the sun sink over the lake, I was no longer alone. The internal shift from just surviving to serving became clear. Military service doesn't end when you take off the uniform, as some of the toughest missions come after. The ranch no longer served as a sanctuary from the world, but as a launchpad for a growing veteran support network that stretched across the region. But that peace was suddenly broken when I received a call just as another sunset cast its glow across the lake. The number was blocked, and the East Coast area code didn't feel right. When I picked up, the voice was disguised, calm, and deliberate. "Mr. Hawkins, congratulations on your recent success with Ms. Torres," the caller said. My instincts kicked in immediately. "Who is this?" I asked. The response was icy. "Someone who respected Melissa's work and who now has a keen interest in yours." The voice continued, noting my naval intelligence background, my tactical knowledge, and my growing influence in the community. "Melissa was part of a larger operation. Her removal has created a broken bar issues," they said. I tapped Agent Martinez's emergency line as the threat escalated. "You've cost our organization over $2 million and removed a key player. A response is required." The ultimatum came with chilling precision: transfer $500,000 within 72 hours or suffer consequences that would go far beyond my peaceful ranch. Agent Martinez worked to trace the origin of the call. The results revealed a network that was far more advanced than Melissa Torres's group, an international operation with significant resources. This wasn't revenge. It was a full-scale criminal syndicate retaliating. The FBI offered witness protection. I turned it down. I wasn't about to walk away from everything we built, especially not from the community that now depended on me. I chose to fortify the ranch even further. With military precision, I implemented defensive measures, installed surveillance systems, and created tactical choke points. The FBI positioned teams nearby, but I requested to manage the first layer of response on my own. I also alerted the veteran network. We activated our collective support systems, proving just how strong our brotherhood was, even in civilian life. When the mysterious voice called again, they delivered their question with arrogance. "Mr. Hawkins, your time is up. Have you reconsidered our generous offer?" I answered calmly, "Actually, I've got a better proposal for you." The line went quiet for a moment. Then, "We're listening." I spoke with the confidence of someone who'd spent 20 years hunting threats. "Turn yourselves into federal authorities within 24 hours or prepare to face the consequences of threatening someone with the entire veteran community behind him." There was a pause, then mocking laughter. "You think your military buddies scare us? This is a sophisticated global operation." That's when I played my final card. I wasn't talking about my buddies. I meant my current employer. They hesitated. "Employer?" "My new role as a federal consultant with the Financial Crimes Task Force. I said. Right then, Agent Martinez's voice joined the call. "This is Agent Martinez with the FBI. We've been recording this entire conversation. You're now under investigation for threatening a federal consultant." The line disconnected instantly. 1 month later, the ranch was alive with celebration. Over 200 veterans, families, and law enforcement officers came together not just to mark the conviction of Melissa Torres but to celebrate the complete dismantling of the fraud network that preyed on veterans. Local officials, law enforcement leaders, and federal agents recognized the work we'd done beyond the battlefield. But the greatest reward was seeing children laughing, families feeling safe, and a community bound by loyalty and trust. That evening, as I sat by the same lake where this journey began, I thought about how far things had come. My story had shifted from seeking peace to creating protection. Military service never truly ends, it just evolves. The ranch had become more than a refuge, it had become the center of something much bigger. And just when I thought the storm had passed, my phone buzzed again with a message from an unknown number. "Mr. Hawkins, you may have won this round, but the game is far from over. We'll be in touch." I showed the message to Agent Martinez, who was leaning back on my porch with a cold beer in hand. "Looks like retirement's off the table," I said with a grin. He raised his bottle in a toast. "Welcome to federal service, Consultant Hawkins." The mission to protect my military family wasn't over, it was just beginning. I'd learned that some of the most important operations happen long after the war is supposed to be finished. This entire experience made something clear: predators will always go after those they think are vulnerable. What they don't count on is the strength of a united community. When veterans stand together, we're unbreakable. The real victory wasn't just about stopping Melissa Torres, it was about building a system that defends thousands of families from exploitation. If the story hit home for you, make sure to like and share to help get this warning in front of as many veterans as possible. Your support could protect someone's savings or their future. The fight against scams targeting our military community isn't over, and there are more stories to come. Stories that will show just how deep this goes. Thanks for watching. I'm Anna, and this is Anna Dramanesta, where reality proves stranger, braver, and often more powerful than fiction. Subscribe and hit that bell, because trust me, things are about to get even more intense.